Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast, where we discuss nonprofit technology, cybersecurity, tech project implementation, strategic planning, and nonprofit IT careers. Find us at communityit.com. Thank you for joining Community IT for this podcast, Part 1. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits. Listen for Part 2 in your podcast feed.
And all right, so I think I'm going to go ahead and welcome you all to the Community IT Innovators presentation on nonprofit tech FOMO, or fear of missing out. So when it comes to new technology, new tools and platforms can seem very shiny and very attractive. And you can feel like you constantly need to move to a newer, better solution to get the latest features, or you will be missing out. So in this webinar, we're going to talk about escaping that cycle of reacting to new technology marketing by firmly establishing a technology decision-making strategy based on your nonprofit's needs, with flexibility and vision that includes a mechanism to thoughtfully evaluate where you want to go with your nonprofit technology over time, which can make you more resistant to shiny new technology syndrome. So I know planning for IT is one of those things you might feel like you have to do. It can feel overwhelming. You might not know where to start. Today, we're going to demystify the process a little bit so you can figure out what new technology you need versus what new technology you might want. So my name is Carolyn Woodard, and I'm the Outreach Director for Community IT. I'm going to talk about our learning objectives for today. We're going to learn what tech FOMO is and why nonprofits are susceptible to new tech fear of missing out. We're going to discuss AI and other transformative tech moments. So if you put AI in the comments that you're feeling a little FOMO about, we are going to talk about that. We're going to learn how to identify needs. We're going to learn how to make software selections and new initiative decisions, thinking about your process or about tools that you might want to invest in. And then we're going to try to understand change management considerations as part of your planning for a new tool or a new platform. And so I'm going to turn it over to our guests. I'm very excited to have with us today. Johan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Carolyn. Really excited to be here. My name is Johan Hammerstrom. I'm the CEO at Community IT here. I've worked here. I'll be celebrating my 25th anniversary in a couple months. So I've experienced a lot of FOMO over the last 25 years, lots of tech trends that have come and gone, going all the way back to when we had dial-up internet. That's how far back I go. Anyways, really happy to have you all here with us today, and looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Johan. And Pat, would you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, I'm Pat Spray. I'm also very excited to be here talking about this topic. I'm coming up on 14 years at Community IT. I'm the Director of Information Systems and Technology, so I work with some of our clients as their IT business manager, helping to manage IT and planning for IT. And I also support our internal IT, helping our staff to accomplish our mission of helping our clients accomplish their missions.
So I'm so looking forward to what you have to share with us today about piloting programs and like going through those decisions. So before we get started, though, if you're not familiar with us with Community IT, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about us. We are a 100% employee-owned managed services provider. So we provide outsourced IT support, and we work exclusively with nonprofit organizations. And as Pat said, our mission is to help nonprofits accomplish their missions through the effective use of technology. So we really believe that well-managed IT is essential for nonprofits to achieve your missions, and we believe all nonprofits deserve well-managed IT. We serve nonprofits across the United States. We've been doing this for over 20 years, and we are technology experts. We are consistently given the MSP 501 recognition for being a top MSP, which is an honor we received again in 2024. But more than being technology experts, we're experts in how nonprofits work, what values are important to you, and what you need from your IT. Serving nonprofits is the only reason that we do this work. So I want to remind everyone that for these presentations, Community IT is vendor agnostic. We only make recommendations to our clients and only based on their specific business needs, which is something we'll be talking about today specifically. We never try to get a client into a product because we get an incentive or benefit from that, but we do consider ourselves a best of breed IT provider. So it's our job to know the landscape, the tools that are available, reputable, and widely used. And we make recommendations to our clients on that basis based on their business needs, priorities, and budget. So now we would like to move on to our first poll. So when did you last implement new technology? And the answers are, I can't recall or never. So long ago, I don't remember when. Every few years is a possibility. We try new tech all the time, not applicable or something else. And if you have something else that you would be able to share with us, just go ahead and put that in the chat. All right. And Johan, would you mind reading the answers?
Sure. So about 10% were I can't recall or never. 32%, about a third, were every few years. Roughly half were we try new tech all the time. And there was one other, which was in the chat.
Yeah, so in the chat, we had a couple of answers. Over the past year is an answer, or every few years is an answer as well. So that's really, thank you so much for participating in that. And someone's responding this week. So they're rolling something out as we speak. So yeah, I think this just indicates that it can be all over the place, and you're all welcome. So we're going to talk about this and how, if you are doing this all the time, probably have some best practices for us or some lessons learned or looking for some tips. And if you really don't invest in new tech very often, we want to talk about that too and why that is. And it might be perfectly acceptable. So no judgment.
Right. I would say that there could be a wrong answer. It could be any one of the three, exactly, depending on your organization.
Exactly. So, and this is our next poll, which I'm going to go ahead and launch. So how did that implementation go? So the options are great. And if you have a few reasons, you could put those in the chat. Share with us, so we have a learning environment here. The second option could be not so great, but not too bad, kind of, 50-50 in there. It had some highs and some lows. The third option is badly. That new tech rollout did not go very well. And you can put those reasons in the chat if you feel comfortable with just identifying one or two things that kind of went wrong. And then the fourth option is not applicable. So those people who answered, I can't remember the last time we did new tech, can go ahead and click not applicable for this poll. And again, as we just said, there's no judgment. It happens. It happens all the time. Rolling out new technology, especially a platform that's everyone's going to use, but even a tool, even if only a few people are going to use it, can be really, really challenging. It's probably one of the most challenging things that you do in technology at a nonprofit. So we're here to talk about it. We're here for you. And Pat, if you can see that, would you mind reading it?
Yes, so we have about 10% said it did great. We have about 2/3, 67% said not so great, but not too bad. 6% said badly, so it's good to see that that's pretty low. And 17% said not applicable.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that, everyone. So we have a couple things in the chat. Someone says in between great and not so bad, since we're still in the implementation process of some new tech tools. And that was Kristen, who said that she's rolling something out this week. Adriana says great because more easy is my job. That's good. Marshall says not too great, but not too bad. Had to move quickly due to stakeholder departure. Would have liked to plan out and move more deliberately, but thankfully it went well and just in the nick of time. So congratulations, Marshall. That sounds like all in all a success story, but it's definitely these are some of the things that can be super challenging. People leaving, having to rush your schedule, all of those issues. So thanks for identifying those for us. Why do nonprofits feel new tech FOMO? And is that a problem? Is it not a problem? Johan, I think you are going to kick us off talking about what is new tech FOMO and why do nonprofits suffer from it?
Yeah, so so FOMO, as most of you know, stands for fear of missing out. And new tech FOMO is the idea that there's new technology that's available that if you or your organization don't adopt it soon enough, then it's going to create a problem. It's going to create issues for your organization in the long run. So there are a couple of reasons why we all feel new tech FOMO, and then there are some reasons why nonprofits specifically, I think, have concerns about new tech FOMO or experience it. I think one of the reasons is that there's kind of a common refrain in the nonprofit sector that nonprofits are always behind on technology, which is, I don't know if that's entirely true. That hasn't necessarily been our experience, but I think for a long time that's been the conventional wisdom. And I know when we talk to organizations, they'll often say, well, we're a nonprofit, so we don't have the latest and greatest, or we're kind of behind on our technology. So I think part of it's just conventional wisdom that there's just this assumption that nonprofits are behind, partly because of the resource constraints that nonprofits often have to operate within. So there's that sort of general feeling. I think there are oftentimes there are situations where organizations are behind. They have older technology, they have outdated technology. Maybe that's been the history of the organization. And so they kind of feel like, oh, we fell behind before. We held on to a server for too long, and it crashed and we were down, and then it was expensive to get rid of it. And so then there's kind of that memory of being behind the times and the negative impact that it had. So I think for all of those reasons, nonprofits can be particularly susceptible, to new tech FOMO.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to ask you more about the marketing. So being in marketing myself, and having worked at nonprofits previously, I feel like there can often be marketing that is aimed at that kind of emotional response of, if I get this new technology, it will slice my bread and butter it for me, and then I won't have these older problems with technology that I've been having. Do you see that?
Yes. I mean, I think that's something I think that's the other half of where new tech FOMO comes from. It comes from the tech industry itself, which is, highly incented to sell new technology to people. And so, and there's a lot of money going into the tech sector. And so it's kind of around us all the time. Certainly, we've all experienced it in the last year or two with the AI hype, that there's this great pressure coming in the media, in news media, in online media, video media, that AI is the wave of the future, and if you're not, on board with it, you're going to be left behind. Like, I think there's very powerful forces coming out of the tech industry that are really trying to promote that view. And we all experience it, and I think we're all kind of susceptible to it. I think it's important to remember that that's the same thing that we were all kind of that's the same message that came out with crypto when that was a new technology. That's the same message that came out with mobile phones, when they first were released. And I think mobile phones are a good example where if you didn't buy the first iPhone, it's okay. You probably have a smartphone now. And I think that's a good thing to remember. Like, if technology is really here to stay, it will eventually be adopted.
Another example would be just the cloud in general, like cloud as an infrastructure. So way back when, Microsoft had something called BPAWS, which I think was like business productivity something. It was like their Microsoft cloud solution. It was horrible. Like it was really bad. Eventually, they came out with Microsoft 365, and now when I talk to other MSPs that don't work in the nonprofit space, they're talking about, well, how do we get our clients to move into the cloud? How do we get them off the server? It's like we're pretty much all done with that. Like pretty much every new client that comes to us is already in the cloud. And I think in many ways, nonprofits have kind of taken the lead in moving their infrastructure, their email and their files into the cloud.
Yeah, and I think another good example of nonprofits being in the lead is Google Workspace. And a lot of the organizations that are coming to us or that we support use Google Workspace rather than Office 365. And that's a great example of organizations really embracing a technology that's maybe a better fit, for what they need as an organization.
I think when we were talking about this topic and getting ready for this webinar, we also, I don't know if you could talk a little bit about nonprofits are used to seizing transformative moments or seeing areas in their field of expertise where they can make a small change or attack a single piece of a problem that then is going to have larger ripple effects throughout that community. And it's kind of related to being able to do more with less, I think. And it reminds me a little bit of the ice bucket challenge when it's around fundraising like that. If you have a viral thing that you do, and then, some of those organizations ended up with the problem of too much money coming in. So trying to find those transformative reflection points where you can make an impact at one pivot point and then it has a wide-ranging effect is something that I think nonprofits as a sector are pretty good at doing. So you can see how that lends itself to wanting to find a tech solution that's then going to have this big outsized impact for the effort that you put into it. So something that you said, Pat, when we were getting ready for this was that new tech should be the vehicle and not the driver. And that really stuck with me. So can you explain a little bit more what you meant?
Yeah, this gets into the idea that's at the core of community IT, which is that the purpose of technology is to support the mission. It's not, tech is not there just to be cool. And so the goal is that if you are looking for a technology solution, whether that's a application or a service, whether that's like a policy or process that's related to tech, what you're looking for is to either solve a problem or to fulfill a need, to improve some service or cover some gap that you have. So the goal is to identify what is the need or the problem that you're addressing, and then find a way to the technology can help you with that. So I see this a lot when it comes to AI and looking at AI. Like we've been looking at AI, and the question is, well, okay, AI, great. What is the AI gonna do? And there's just kind of a blank space where you're supposed to just kind of figure out what you want AI to do. And so in some ways, like I feel like we're waiting for the solution to come along with AI, which, in part it's kind of a marketing term, and tell us like what is that supposed to do that's supposed to help us. Like okay, AI is supposed to be really good, but like for what? Like what are we doing here? And so I think we're kind of waiting on that.
Well, I think that's a perfect segue into our next topic, which was something that several people had put in the chat of something they're feeling FOMO about right now. So I think we have even a mini case study from ourselves of how we're thinking about AI at Community IT. And just it is like the big it's coming at us at 100 miles per hour and it's in everything. So should nonprofits be implementing it like right now? Or how can you think about AI when you're trying to think about new tech?
Yeah, I think for us, the big place where we kind of plugged into AI was when Microsoft Copilot became available. So just kind of taking a step back, like a year or actually 2 years ago, like AI was like not on really anyone's radar, and then ChatGPT came out, and then Microsoft Copilot came out with their thing, and then Google came out with, I think it was Bard, which is then they came out with Gemini, and now like everybody is talking about AI everywhere. Zoom has like an AI companion. Um, we've looked at it a little bit. Like we have had some people using Microsoft Copilot since we're in Microsoft 365. I used it for a bit. I actually didn't find it that useful for myself, which was interesting. We have other staff who have tried it out. They found use cases which have been very useful. Um, you know, one thing is I noticed is like PowerPoint is an example where you can take a Word document that you've written about something and ask ask Copilot to create a PowerPoint from it, and it does it, and it's kind of it's okay. Like I think it was like a 2-page document and had Copilot create a PowerPoint, and I got something like a 20-page or 20-slide PowerPoint presentation, which was just incredibly generic and repetitive information, and it wasn't like it was a pretty bad presentation. What I needed was like 3 or 4 slides that kind of captured some bullet points, and it was just easier for me to create that manually. I also find personally that the process of creating PowerPoint slides and a presentation is what lets me kind of think through about how I want to present the presentation. And so for me, like AI just didn't help. It made things worse. There's an idea though that, and I think where we're going to see AI really be beneficial is if you have a lot of data, it's going to be very useful to have AI kind of either parse through the data. Right now, there are tools like Power BI, which you really have to know what you're doing and what you're looking for in order to use those, a database tool like Power BI. Um, Using AI to analyze spreadsheets, I think may be very useful with a lot of data. And so I think that's kind of where AI is going to start to come in as a valuable tool. And it will be interesting to see like what those kinds of tools, what like Power BI with Copilot looks like, more so than how to use Copilot to give me a summary of the emails that I got when I was out for the past week on vacation.
That makes sense. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about the steps that you go through for evaluating what your need really is and then matching a new technology to that need. I have seen, and I feel like it's all around, whenever you are in an AI presentation or read an article about it, there's a lot of advice to just try it. Just try it. Like start messing around with it. Ask ChatGPT something, ask Gemini to do something and see how it works and just kind of play around with it yourself, which not all of us have time to just sit there for half an hour, and quote unquote play around with our new technology that we might want to use. But also, is that something that you would recommend just to try and see where it has a use case? It seems like that's a little bit of the opposite of like play around with it and see what it can do, and then see if you can apply that to something that you need. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that I think it's very useful to try these things out, and what the goal is to it's the old Silicon Valley adage of fail fast, fail early. So if you have an inexpensive way to try out Copilot or any other AI tool, then it can be very useful to try it and find out if it's right for you. And at some point, I'm sure you'll we'll have to come back and revisit it because, I'm sure AI will change a lot over the next year or two. I know like a Copilot license is, it's $30 a month, and you can pass around a single license to different users. And so if you've got several people who are asking about using AI in Microsoft, then you could buy one license and you can, let people try it for a month or two, and see what they come up with. That's true. You do have to pay for the full year upfront. So it's actually $360 a year total.
I do think it's important to be aware of the big tech companies' incentives around AI. So the current AI, gold rush, if you will, started back in 2017 with Google, that developed this transformer that ended up being used. It's basically a huge technical. It's a software that runs in these huge data centers that processes enormous amounts of data, and they were just pulling all of the data from all across the internet. That transformer, that's where the T from ChatGPT comes from. They had some very early, very promising successes with that in the late 2010s. And so OpenAI founded to start to develop other software based on that transformer technology. They needed huge data centers, which they didn't have. And so they entered into a partnership with Microsoft. And so Microsoft supports the OpenAI, all of the technology that they have, including ChatGPT, runs on in Microsoft's data centers. That costs a lot of money. So Google, Facebook, Microsoft, they're all spending a lot of money to run these models. And at some point, they need to see a return on that investment. And so ChatGPT, when it launched, was kind of this phenomenon. Everyone was sort of amazed by it in terms of its conversational abilities and its abilities to process natural language. And so it took off. It was, it's sort of famously the technology that had the greatest adoption rate, the fastest rate of adoption of any product that's ever, or any, application that's ever launched. But the fall off rate has also been extremely dramatic, and very few people now, it's kind of like Pokemon Go of, 2022, where a lot of people used it for a little while, and then people are like, yeah, this is not that great, not that helpful. And so Microsoft is they need to recoup their investment. They developed originally an application called Copilot that ran in GitHub, which is a repository that most developers use. That's actually the best use case for all of this AI right now, is helping developers write code more effectively. And so Microsoft is looking to expand that use case into other areas, and they just kept the branding and called it Copilot. But they really, in my opinion, they really rushed it to market because they were looking to sell a lot of these, and the technology is not really entirely there yet. So if you've used Copilot and you're like, I don't get it, I don't know what the big deal is, don't feel like you're missing something. That's a perfectly reasonable response.
There's a case to be made for waiting for the technology to settle down and the companies to settle down as well. And there may be some consolidation still happening, probably not with AI because it takes those big companies, and there's the 4 that are doing it right now. But for sure, with other technology tools that you might be looking at, when you're first looking at it, there might be 20 options, and within a couple of years, there might be 3. And so if you made that decision, you might have to go back and remake that decision on a new tool because your tool got acquired or it's going out of business or what have you. So I want to move on a little bit. We're going to share some AI and nonprofit resources. I will say that we just did a podcast on AI and cybersecurity. So we do have some other AI specific and cybersecurity specific content on our website, which is communityit.com. But I'm not going to read through all of these AI and nonprofits resources. And if you're on the call right now and you're kind of struggling quickly to write them down, don't worry, they will be in the transcript, both for the podcast and on our website when we post the video about this. But we have some resources on frameworks. There are some good frameworks specifically for nonprofits to kind of get at the ethical and philosophical questions around using AI at all. And then I found this really interesting. Google has put out some prompt guides for nonprofits. If you're using Gemini or other AI tools, you can look at some of these prompts that are specific to nonprofits that might help you. Some use cases, the Stanford Social Innovation Review has been kind of at the forefront of writing about AI in nonprofits and philanthropy in that space. So I would recommend looking at those articles. For learning, we have Tim Lockey, who did our webinar in February, has an online course. It is $99, but it's AI for anyone. And so he was specifically for nonprofits. So he's talking about how to use AI in some of these use case scenarios around productivity. And then LinkedIn Learning, of course, has lots of resources as well for learning about how to use AI. And then we have a bunch of resources on our website as well, including an acceptable use of AI template that you can download to write a policy for your own organization around how you're going to use AI tools. So that might be something that you want to look at.
Thank you for joining Community IT for this podcast, Part 1. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits. Listen for Part 2 in your podcast feed. Community IT does these free webinars and podcasts for our community, and we love sharing our knowledge and experience. If you have more questions or are having trouble with your IT at your nonprofit, please get in touch with us on our website, www.communityit.com, so we can start a conversation or schedule an assessment. Downloading any of our free resources there will get you signed up for our webinar reminders, and you can attend our next webinar in real time and ask our experts your own questions. If you love podcasts, please subscribe and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits.